Okay, so let's just quickly go through communication skills again. So the question we asked ourselves was, how do we communicate? And we had a wonderful process of communication with our two lovely emoji people. All right, so don't forget, your brain, that firing all those little electrical impulses, gives you a thought, emotion, or an idea. Then from that thought, emotion, or idea, you need something that you can then transmit across to the other person. It's no good just being electrical impulses in your head, so your brain goes through the coding process to turn that into something that can be transmitted, whether that be something that you write down, whether that be something you type, whether that be something you say, whether that be something that you do touch-wise, something you do with your body language, whatever it is gets transmitted across.
How are you doing?
Here we go. Bit of Joey from Friends there. And then hopefully as that gets transmitted, it then gets received by the other person. Everything working as it should. Their brain then decodes what you've sent over them, and they understand the message that you have sent. Remember, this isn't that they necessarily agree in our example here with love emojis. It's just they understand the point that you are trying to get across. Then we had our other example, exactly the same process. But somewhere along the line, there is a breakdown in communication, whether that be in the coding process, you use the wrong word, or you body language you use isn't correct, your facial expressions give you away, something happens, you use the wrong words as you go to speak, your tone of voice is wrong, your body language is wrong, your non-verbal communication, anything is wrong. It could be that the transmission isn't clear. The person, when they receive the transmission, they don't necessarily understand it in the same way because their brain decodes it in a slightly different way. So we spent a lot of time talking about communication and why it was so important. Okay, this then links into what we're talking about, which is diffusing high tension situations. All right, we're going to go through the rest of the communication stuff anyway. But we're just going to focus a little bit more on the stuff that we're talking about. All right. So when we were talking about speaking, we were saying that context is everything. All right. If you are at work, then it needs to be formal, but also the situation that you are in will determine how you speak, what language you use, the tone of voice you use, the gestures you use, etc. All right. So remember, if it's at work, it's formal. If it's not at work, generally it isn't formal, but there can be blurring of the lines. We've just had Christmas, we had all Christmas parties where it'd be a bit of a nightmare. Is it formal, is it informal when you're out with your boss? All right. And also remember that communication, verbal communication, can be one way. Literally what I am doing now is one way verbal communication. You cannot interact with it, so I have to be careful how I'm speaking, the language that I'm using, to hopefully you understand the message. Whereas if you're having a conversation with somebody, that is going to be more two-way communication. All right, then we did our little game where we talked about, how we can use our tone of voice and about what we were talking about for breakfast. All right, you're happy about what you had for breakfast. I had porridge 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 for breakfast. All right, so thinking about that. Then we went on to talk about questions. All right, closed questions and open questions. Closed questions only being answered with a yes or no answer. All right, and obviously we'll start in have different words as they start with, and then more open questions can be answered in lots and lots of different ways. So if you're verbally communicating with somebody, think about what kind of information do you want from them. Do you just want short information? Do you want quick information? All right, then the important bit that I think might be in parts of the exam is talking about non-verbal communication and how you can use that to diffuse high tension situations, or how non-verbal communication can be used or can exacerbate high tension situations. All right. So thinking about eye contact, when we were in the class, we were talking about, eye contact can be important, but it can be used to intimidate people. It can be used to make people feel uncomfortable. So it's about using the right amount of eye contact at the right time, making sure that, someone knows that you're paying attention to them by using eye contact, but not going so far that you start to make them feel uncomfortable, or that they might feel threatened by the eye contact that you are using. So in a high tension situation, making sure you are making eye contact with that person, but not to the point where you feel you're going to be intimidating them. All right, gestures, things you do with your hands in high tension situations. You're going to make sure that you're very open with your gestures. When we watched the video with the guy with the knives, he was using his hands, pointing downwards. All right, saying, what can I do? And I want you to put the knife down, and being very careful with his gestures about what he wanted him to do. Think about what you do with your hands. Are they open? Are they closed? Are you going to invade someone's personal space with your gestures? You don't want to exacerbate the situation again. Facial expressions, again, a tricky one. Just making sure that you've got quite an open face, that it's not displaying anger or fear or anything like that. Just keeping it, very, very relaxed, very soft. You can communicate a huge amount of empathy with your facial expressions. All right. Touching, now obviously in high tension situations, you probably won't be doing a huge amount of touching. If you do, it might have gone a little bit wrong. But again, we can use touch to show sympathy towards someone, to show empathy towards somebody, to reassure somebody. But again, much like eye contact, if we use too much of it, it can be shown in the wrong way. So we're going to use it sparingly if we need to use it at all. And then obviously your body language, how you stand. Are you, in an aggressive stance? Are you in a passive stance? What are you going to do? Yeah, obviously, again, in a high tension situation, you want to be trying to calm that down. So you don't want to be aggressive, but you do want to be assertive. So making sure that, you're showing that you aren't going to be pushed around, but also that you don't want to necessarily have a fight with that person. And then lastly, obviously, presentation. Again, with high tension situations, not going to be huge, but thinking about how you present yourself and the message that sends to other people. All right. Now, barriers to communication, physical barriers. You can't be heard. Something is in the way that stops you from being heard. The noise around you would be a physical barrier. So if you're trying to diffuse a situation, make sure there are no physical barriers to that communication. All right. That person might be in a bit of a stressed mood, or they might feel that you are talking down to them. So the attitude that they have might be getting in the way of that communication. So again, try and put yourself in their shoes. Think about ways that you can empathize with the person, ways that you can keep that person on your side, all again whilst trying to diffuse that situation. Obviously, in a high tension situation, people might be being emotional. They might not be wanting to listen to reason, so you've then got to think about the language that you're using. What do you want from that person? Speak very calmly so that you're not going to, again, make the situation worse. You want to mitigate the situation, so calm tone of voice, all right, making sure that the barriers aren't going to get in the way. And if someone is in an emotional state, think about what you are going to be able to get out of them. If someone is high on drugs or drink or angry or something like that, then you've got to really think about what you can do that. Linguistically, think about the language that you're going to use. Again, try and just use very simple, plain English that can't be misinterpreted. Again, that person is going to be decoding what you say to them. If you give them something that could be construed as something else, something that's a bit ambiguous, that isn't specific, then that could cause problems. So choose your words carefully. Think about what you want to say. Think about what you want them to do. Again, in that video, he said, what can I reasonably do to resolve the situation?